One game that is on the minds of most Nintendo Switch owners is, of course, Smash Bros. For the Nintendo Switch. During the last Nintendo Direct, we got a little bit of a teaser saying that the game was coming. The game will probably involve Inklings, and the game is coming in 2018. But beyond that, we don't really know anything about it. Obviously, some things will be revealed at E3 this year, as the game will be playable on the show floor, and they're also doing a tournament for it. But we don't know anything about the game beyond that, and that's very interesting to me, because it's always fun to think about what characters could potentially be in the next Smash Brothers games, because honestly, that's really the driving force for Smash Brothers games when it comes to me personally. I'm not a hardcore Smash player, I'm definitely a casual Smash player. I really like the different characters that they add in and the roster variety in that games. That's pretty much the driving point for me. That's the focal point for me, is what characters are they putting in this new one? What third-party characters or first-party characters that we might have forgotten about will be included in this version of Smash Brothers? So I thought to myself, it would be fun to talk about the characters I want to see in Smash Brothers. What characters I think would really round out the roster and make this arguably the best Smash Brothers game ever. So in this video, that's what we're going to talk about. I think all of these characters have a decent chance. Maybe one or two have a really far outside chance, but I think at least 3 of these characters will definitely be in the upcoming Smash Brothers game and be available to play on the roster. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about the characters I want to see in Super Smash Brothers for the Nintendo Switch.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! Alright, so the first character, honestly, is a character that should have probably already been in Smash Brothers, I feel. It is an iconic Nintendo character that was in 2 of the biggest NES games of all time. This character has also been featured in a fighting game, so it would sort of make sense for them to be in this game, and that is Simon Belmont. Simon Belmont is, of course, a part of the Castlevania series, and Castlevania 1 and 2 on the NES are arguably 2 of the biggest NES games of all time. You talk to someone about the NES, one of the titles that comes to mind is, of course, Castlevania. It's iconic, and Simon Belmont himself is a very cool character. He has a whip and all sorts of little side weapons and whatnot, so you could really do a lot with that. And the thing of it is, Simon Belmont has actually already been in a fighting game before that was somewhat recent on the Wii, and that was Castlevania Judgment, and he sort of worked in that game. You could sort of see how Simon Belmont could potentially work in a Smash Brothers game just by playing that game. Sure, that was a 3D fighter, and arguably it wasn't really that good, but it still lays the groundwork for what could potentially be done with that character. As big of a franchise as the Castlevania franchise was, you have to remember, Simon Belmont was actually on the Captain N show. It was a huge franchise that was pretty much on Nintendo platforms at that time, so why not bring him back? The Belmonts aren't doing anything. The Castlevania series isn't really doing much of anything besides a Netflix cartoon right now. So bring back a Belmont. Bring Simon Belmont onto Smash Brothers for the Nintendo Switch. It would be a great fit, and I think it's something that we could potentially see end up happening. So Simon Belmont, that is my first pick. The next character I want to talk about is arguably another character that should have been in a Smash Brothers game. We've actually seen this character in a brand new adventure on the Nintendo Switch, and once again this character got their start on the NES, and that is Bomberman. Bomberman has been around forever, it seems like. Obviously Konami owns the Bomberman license nowadays after they purchased out Hudson Soft. So Simon Belmont is a Konami franchise and Bomberman is a Konami franchise, but once again I think you could potentially see both of them come to this thing. Bomberman 1 and 2 on the NES were iconic games. You saw Bomberman on the Super Nintendo, Bomberman on the N64. You've even seen Bomberman, like I said, on the Nintendo Switch with Super Bomberman R. The character Bomberman himself is, once again, perfect for a fighting game. The whole bomb situation, throwing bombs and whatnot, planting bombs that maybe go off in a time limit or something, it makes perfect sense to see Bomberman come to Smash Brothers. As far as different character costumes goes, just have different color skins. It doesn't really take a rocket scientist to see how Bomberman would fit perfectly in the Smash Brothers universe. So Bomberman, that is my second pick. I really would like to see Bomberman, and I think it would be a solid addition to the Smash Brothers library. This next character has been lighting up the rumor sheets when it comes to the potential Super Smash Bros. Roster, and it's a character that I think makes sense. It's a big character, a third-party character that would make sort of a big splash, like when we saw Solid Snake added to Smash Bros., when we saw Pac-Man added, Mega Man, and of course Sonic the Hedgehog. This is probably the one character that could make as big of a splash in this franchise, and that is Crash Bandicoot. Now, Crash Bandicoot was of course originally a first-party Sony franchise, but Activision ended up picking up the license to Crash Bandicoot and releasing it on a plethora of systems. There was a Crash Bandicoot game on a Nintendo platform as recently as the Wii. Crash Bandicoot was also on the GameCube, and there was even some Game Boy Advance titles featuring Crash Bandicoot. And with Crash Insane Trilogy coming to the Nintendo Switch, what a perfect time to put Crash Bandicoot in there. His playstyle with his spin moves and his apple throwing makes perfect sense for a fighting game. It would fit right into the Smash Bros. Universe seamlessly, I feel, and it would be a big popular character. It would be one of those characters that makes news waves and, you know, RGT news. That was sort of a tongue-in-cheek thing now that I think about it, but it would make a lot of news introducing Crash into this franchise. Activision is the owner of the Crash Bandicoot license. They are putting Crash Bandicoot on the Nintendo Switch. I'm sure they would have really no problem including Crash Bandicoot in Smash Brothers. It's a huge character. It's a character that's coming onto the Nintendo Switch. They've been on Nintendo platforms before, so why not include Crash Bandicoot? One of the biggest 90s icons in gaming would be right at home alongside Sonic and alongside Mario. So I want to see Crash Bandicoot and Smash on the Switch. With the introduction of Ryu from Street Fighter in Super Smash Bros. On the Wii U, I started thinking there are more fighting franchises that need representation in Smash Bros. By an actual character in the game. So the first character I want to see in Smash Bros. From a different fighting franchise is one of my favorite fighting franchises of all time. It was the epitome of 3D fighters back in the early 90s, arguably the first 3D fighter and one of the most successful fighting franchises of all time, and that is Akira from Virtua Fighter. Akira is a mainstay in the Virtua Fighter universe. He has been in every Virtua Fighter game, and I think he would just be a really fun character. I believe he was like a trophy in Super Smash Bros. On the Wii U, but I want to see him as an actual playable character. The Virtua Fighter franchise is of course pretty dormant nowadays. We haven't seen Sega do much with it, but putting Akira into Smash Bros. Could actually bring back the Virtua Fighter franchise. It could bring back people wanting to see that game, people wanting to know more about who Akira is and what Virtua Fighter was all about. So I think it would be a good move for the franchise. Obviously, Sega has no problem putting their big IPs into Smash Bros., so Akira makes perfect sense to me. The second fighting franchise that I want to see have representation in Smash Bros. Is actually kind of surprising that there hasn't been a character yet. And looking through the character roster of this fighting franchise that has been around since the early 90s, it was kind of hard to pick one character from it, but I think I picked the character that represents the series the best, the character that has been in the most titles and actually had a spin-off title featuring himself, and that is Mortal Kombat and Sub-Zero. Yes, Mortal Kombat is very highly stylized and very violent. It's obviously a game that was featured with digitized graphics and then moved on into the 3D polygon models. Yes, it's a bit over the top for the Smash Brothers universe. Yes, it would probably impact the rating of Super Smash Bros., but I definitely think you could get that teen rating with Smash Brothers by featuring Sub-Zero. You just sort of take away some of the blood and whatnot. And Sub-Zero is an iconic fighting franchise character. Like I said, he's been there since the first Mortal Kombat, which of course appeared on the Super Nintendo. Mortal Kombat has been on a plethora of Nintendo platforms, the GameCube, the Wii, the Super Nintendo, the N64. It just makes sense to me. Sub-Zero is such an iconic character, a really fun character, you know, with all the freeze mechanics and whatnot, and I think would make a good addition to Smash Brothers. The final character I want to talk about is definitely the most outside character in this list. A character that probably has no potential to come to the system, but a character that would be so awesome and it would make so much sense. And I'm sure there would be tons of licensing issues and it would be such a pain in the ass to do it, but I feel like the ends would justify the means with this, and that is Batman. Why has there not been any superhero characters in the Smash Brothers universe? Batman, of course, is another character that has made his debut on the NES. Batman has been on pretty much every Nintendo platform. Actually, I can't think of a Nintendo platform, including handhelds, aside from the Virtual Boy, that did not feature a Batman game. Batman, of course, is in fighting games like Injustice, which Injustice, the first game, actually came to the Nintendo Switch, or the Nintendo Wii U. So why not include Batman? He has such an interesting backstory. He has a great great fighting mechanic if you want to use something like how he's featured in Injustice, or if you even want to use the brawling system used in the Arkham series. I think Batman would really add a lot to the game. It would be so cool to have all these different color costume Batmans. You could do 60s Batman, Michael Keaton Batman, Val Kilmer Batman. No George Clooney though. We're gonna pretend George Clooney was never Batman. But I really feel like there's a lot you could do with the Batman character, even including in the animated series, which is my personal favorite form of Batman. I would love to see Batman in Smash. I think it makes sense, and I want to see it done. So Nintendo, get the paperwork going, and let's get Batman in the Smash. Alright, and those are the characters I want to see added into Smash Brothers. I think most of these characters have a decent chance of being included into Smash Brothers. Obviously, with licensing and stuff, Nintendo is willing to take some risks and go outside and get some interesting characters. Hell, Cloud has never been on a Nintendo platform until Smash Brothers. So if you're including Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, a game that's never been on your platform, why not include characters that have actually been on your platform? Like all these cool characters I just talked about. I think they would make an awesome addition to Smash Brothers. But I want to know what characters you want to see in Smash Brothers on the Nintendo Switch. Let your imagination go wild. Sure, some of these characters may never happen, but it's fun to think about, and it's fun to talk about different characters that could potentially enter the Smash Brothers universe. And of course, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Check out the description box. We got all sorts of links down there, Patreon, t-shirts, social media, all sorts of ways to keep up to date with RGT85, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.
RGT 85. RGT 85. RGT 85.